This is a 2011 Ford Fiesta. It's got almost 118,000 miles on it now, and my check engine light had been intermittently coming on and off here in the past several months. This is the throttle body that I got online. If you've ever seen a carburetor, you notice it's a lot like just a little one-barrel carburetor. You got your butterfly there. Well, it's much simpler. There's no float, there's no fuel line to hook up. The only thing it has is for a connection is an electrical wire that runs through here and plugs in. It's got 6 prongs in there. And in here is a little motor that controls your throttle. So when you hit the gas pedal, it's like fly-by-wire, and then it's hooked up to the computer as well, so it can adjust your idle and stuff, opening and closing as it's needed. I was watching several videos about these kind of things on YouTube, because I'm not a professional mechanic or anything, so I'm learning as I do this too. And one of the most important things to remember, this electric motor in here has gear reduction, so it's very powerful actually. Apparently Ford says if you try messing with opening and closing this thing while it's actually on the car hooked up to the battery, you could lose a finger. Apparently this motor, what they have, even if the car's turned off, they do what's called a sweep. Apparently, like especially in the winter, if there's a chance of it freezing up so that it doesn't freeze in position, it'll just occasionally open and close. And you don't know when it's going to do it. Now, changing one of these isn't really all that difficult. The throttle body is actually right down here. You might already be familiar with your air filter is in here. So then you have a little hose here that just the air goes through the filter and then pulls in, goes down into the throat of this and into the engine. I'm going to use a 10mm socket, or you could use a 3/8 inch. I'm not sure if this thing's metric or not, but I'm using a metric one. And we'll remove the negative cable. And I need to clean up a little corrosion off of it too. I'm just going to wrap this up with a piece of cloth just to make sure that it doesn't swing back and make contact. This one here is just slightly more awkward to get to. You can see these screws, they're not like a typical Phillips head. It's called a Torx, T-O-R-X. Maybe, just maybe, I ought to disconnect that electrical wire too before I do the rest, so it doesn't fall off and be hanging by the wire. This connector's pretty easy. Just push down, and looks like it'll pull right off. Okay, all 4 of them are out and it hasn't fallen off, so it's probably a little bit stuck on with a heated up gasket or something. Came off pretty easy. Here's the gasket I bought on the internet on eBay, and it's basically a little O-ring. So that's what the gasket is. If you notice, there's a tab sticking out, and it goes up at the top. Right there, there's a little notch. Okay, so that went in nice and easy. The other gasket didn't look damaged at all. It was just a little dirty, so it's very possible that I would have got away without it, but it was another, let's say, 12 or 13 bucks. So here is my new used throttle body I'm going to put on, and got to make sure it's, see, it's only got the 4 screws and the wiring connector to hook up. And you want to have it like this with your black plastic over here on the right and your wire up to the top. So I'm going to go ahead and have a screw in here. put. I'm just going to get it in there enough that it's on there right at the minute so that the screw's not going to fall out. I've just got to wiggle it till you feel it snap into the spot. Like I say, I don't have these screwed in near all the way yet. I think it's easiest just to go ahead and by hand put the screw in. It's in there far enough I can let go of it. It ain't falling out. And then I'm going to very gently tighten each one up, just barely enough to snug, going from corner to corner. I'm going to go like here to here and here to here and keep repeating that. I want to be careful. These screws are actually, that holder that it's screwed into is a hard plastic. So you don't have to crank these in super tight. This next thing is something I read on another guy's video. It's a guy that's got a lot of Ford videos and he seems to be a professional mechanic. He says that since this stuff is run by computer, that it memorizes things, like the settings on that throttle body with all the throttle motion. And he says to reset it like back to 0, I've got my negative cable is not connected to the battery at all. You never ever connect the negatives directly to the positive. You'll get sparks like crazy and blow up the battery in your face. But since this isn't connected to here, I'm supposed to be able to do this. Now, you did it with a jumper wire, alligator clip here and alligator clip here. I just don't happen to have one handy. So I'm just using my metal screwdriver. I'm not getting any sparks. It said you might get a little tick. I've seen that happen. I'm going to hold it there for several seconds. Now it's supposed to discharge the computer stuff in the car so it resets them back to 0. And now when I hook this all back up after I clean this off, I should have a 0 baseline. And according to that guy, after you get your hoses and stuff hooked back up, you start up the car and let it idle for like 15 minutes. And what it does is it reads all the changes in the temperature change of the engine and adjusts that to how the little throttle blade in your throttle body opens and closes so that you get a smooth idle. And then after you do that, you're supposed to take it out and drive it for like half an hour or so. And it's supposed to set you back to where everything's good and you'll get good gas mileage and all that. If you ever replace something like this and all of a sudden the car doesn't want to idle good and stuff like that, that's what he says is the problem and it needs a reset. This is what I use to clean the carbon buildup off the throttle body. Notice it's got carb choking. It says throttle body cleaner. That's the important part. A video I watched said that the ones that just say carburetor cleaner might be too harsh for a throttle body. I don't know what the deal is, if it's the kind of metal it's made out of or what, but apparently you should make sure it says throttle body cleaner on it. So now I've got to put my hose back on. Notice you got the little male post out here. That's for this, so you got to have that on that side, and then you want to make sure that you got your hose clamps rotated around where you can get on them with a screwdriver or something. Now remember I had a little difficulty taking that other hose off? It's because it had to go over this lip. So when you put it back on, you got to push fairly firm to get it to go over that and get it on there. And then this one here has a smaller lip, so it should be a little easier. Okay. You got to hook up this little baby again. And then just tighten up my hose clamps. Got one here and here, and also of course hook up my wire. Make sure you push this back good. This should seat up here. I thought I had it on. It wasn't quite all the way on there. It looked a little crooked, but now it's pushed flush up against there. Now there's a little notch in this hose clamp, which of course if you break the hose clamp, I'm sure you could just use any hose clamp, but it fits on this plastic thing, keeps it from rotating. Now the other clamp down here was a little more of a challenge, just because it's kind of tight getting your hand and your screwdriver down there. It has a notch in the hose clamp too, but I couldn't find a place. But I did remember I had the screwdriver coming in from this angle. So now all I gotta do is hook up my wire again, which maybe I should have done before I put the hose back on, huh? Learn that lesson from me. Put the wire back on before the hose. I think I can get it, but it's a little bit tight. Here's something that's really important to remember. When you go and put that electrical connector back on, see this little plastic notch? You got to push pretty hard and even squeeze to get it to click. It took me a minute to do it. If you don't, the thing will keep coming unplugged and you'll be going nuts. Your car won't run. So here's the connector, and I had to get my fingers on here, and I had to really squeeze tight to get it to squeeze on there. And you can actually hear a little click, so then you'll know you've got it on there. If you don't have it on there, you'll be able to just slide it right back off. So make sure you got it on there. Now that I've got everything else put back together, last, I'm going to reconnect my negative cable. Snug that up. Now I say a little prayer to the Ford Motor Company and start her up. So that went just fine, and now I'm supposed to let it idle for a good 15 minutes to get the car up to temperature so that the computer reads all the changes and adjusts how your throttle opens and closes. It'll adjust whether it opens this much, whatever. It's just making fine-tuning adjustments. And also I noticed that it reset my clock and my calendar on the radio, so I may have lost all my radio presets and all that, but we'll get her going. I let it idle for a good 15 minutes. Everything seemed perfectly normal. The only thing I had to reset was my clock, the date, and then it also reset my trip meter and the average miles per gallon. So really no big deal. And then, like I said, I'm supposed to drive it, according to that guy, for about 30 minutes. And notice too, I had discharged the battery cable across there before I did it. I don't know what would have happened if I had skipped that and put it on. Maybe it would have just ran fine, maybe it would have idled kind of funky.